Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 21 of our reading of Leaves of Gold. Let's go over what Leaves of Gold is actually. Leaves of Gold is an anthology of prayers, memorable phrases, inspirational verse, and prose from the best authors of the world, both ancient and modern, edited by Clyde Francis Lytle. Next, we have the copyright information, this is the revised edition, 12th printing. 1964, copyright 1938 by Evan S. Coslett, revised 1948 by Donald G. Remley, copyright 1948 by A.C. and D.G. Remley, and it is published by the Coslett Publishing Company out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, printed in the United States of America, and we are to chapter 21, which is on opportunity. Okay. And so let's go. Optimism. I have told you of this Spaniard who always put on his spectacles when about to eat cherries, that they might look bigger and more tempting. In like manner, I make the most of my enjoyments and pack away my troubles in as small a compass as I can. That is by Robert Southey. Next we have civilization itself is simply a granary into which society has swept all the rich harvests of the mind. Now 10 talent men are few. Thus far, philosophers have found 5 men whose genius is of the first order, and whose work has been epic-making and revolutionary. But the dizzy space that separates these men from the rudest savage is not so great as the space that separates Earth's 5 greatest intellects from this divine carpenter, whose achievements for home and friendship, for law and liberty, for learning and religion, make his forehead to strike against the stars. That is by Hillis. Next we have luck. Luck is an ignis fatuus. You may follow it to ruin, but not to success. That is by James A. Garfield. Next we have it. It is not the position, but the disposition that makes men and women happy. Circumstances may make a man, but circumstances never made a man out of unprepared material. About the only exercise some folks take is jumping at conclusions. Make a man believe he is worthless, and he will act worthless. Good clothes on some folks remind you of pretty labels and empty bottles. Character stands for all that this moral demanding century wants. That is from Dingerisms. Next we have the Great Conqueror. Jesus of Nazareth, without money and arms, conquered more millions than Alexander, Caesar, Muhammad, and Napoleon. Without science and learning, he shed more light on things human and divine than all philosophers and scholars combined. Without the eloquence of schools, he spoke words of life as never were spoken before or since, and produced effects which lie beyond the reach of orator or poet. Without writing a single line, he has set more pens in motion and furnished themes for more sermons, orations, discussions, learned volumes, works of art, and sweet songs of praise than the whole army of great men of ancient and modern times. Born in a manger and crucified as a malefactor, he now controls the destinies of the civilized world and rules a spiritual empire which embraces 1/3 of the inhabitants of the globe. There never was in this world a life so unpretending, modest, and lowly in its outward form and condition, and yet producing such extraordinary effects upon all ages, nations, and classes of men. The annals of history produce no other example of such complete and astonishing success in spite of the absence of those material, social, literary, and artistic powers and influences which are indispensable to success for a mere man. That is by Schaff. Next, we have the saying of Omar ibn al-Halif, the second caliph. Four things come not back: the spoken word, the sped arrow, time past, and the neglected opportunity. Next, we have, make sure here, obscuring truth. I cannot think but that the world would be better and brighter if our teachers would dwell on the duty of happiness as well as the happiness of duty. That is by John Lubbock. Every duty we omit obscures some truth we should have known. That is by Ruskin. Now we have renewal. There is one illustration of the value of the constant renewal of society from the bottom that has always interested me profoundly. The only reason why government did not suffer dry rot in the Middle Ages under the aristocratic system, which then prevailed, was that so many of the men who were efficient instruments of the government were drawn from the church, from that great religious body, which was then the only church. That body which we now distinguish from other religious bodies as the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church was then, as it is now, a great democracy. There was no peasant so humble that he might not become a priest, and no priest so obscure that he might not become pope of Christendom. And every chancellery in Europe, every court in Europe, was ruled by these learned, trained, and accomplished men. The priesthood of that great and dominant body, what kept government alive in the Middle Ages, was this constant rise of the sap from the bottom, from the rank and file of the great body of the people through the open channels of the priesthood. That was by Woodrow Wilson. Next, we have special providences. People talk about special providences. I believe in the providences, but not in the specialty. I do not believe that God lets the thread of my affairs go for 6 days, and on the seventh evening takes it up for a moment. That is by George MacDonald. Next, we have resources. No man is blamed for being a 14-foot catboat instead of a steam yacht or an Atlantic liner. It is only required of him that he heave up whatever sail he carries and be headed right. This simplifies the whole matter and makes the path of duty plain. How much energy and wisdom, how much goodness and spiritual efficiency have you? Not much, you say. No matter, bring it along. As you live in the spirit of Christian devotion, your life will unfold in faith, in hope, and in love until men will say of your master, this of a truth is that prophet that should come into the world. There is a false self-distrust which denies the worth of its own talent. It is not humility, it is petty pride, withholding its simple gift from the hands of Christ because they are not more pretentious. There are men who would endow colleges. They say if they were millionaires, they would help in the work of Bible study if they were as gifted as Henry Drummond. They would strive to lead their associates into the Christian life if they had the gift of Dwight L. Moody. But they are not ready to give what they have and do what they can and be as it has pleased God to make them in his services. And that is their condemnation. That is by Charles Reynolds. Charles Reynolds Brown. Next we have talent. It is your duty to use your talents. Remember, if you do not use you do not use, you will lose. It is reported of Charles Darwin that when he finished his scientific work, he settled down to enjoy life. He thought that he would now enjoy poetry, music, and art. Sad to say, he soon discovered that these things did not strike a response in his being. Later he said, "It is too late now because I have allowed these parts of my being to atrophy." That is by Zollers. Next we have use what you have. A ship lost at sea for many days suddenly sighted a friendly vessel. From the mast of the unfortunate vessel was seen the signal, "Water, water, we die of thirst." The answer from the friendly vessel at once came back, "Cast down your bucket where you are." A second and a third time the signal, "Water, water, send us water," ran up from the distressed vessel, and was answered, "Cast down your bucket where you are." The captain of the distressed vessel, at least heeding the injunction, cast down his bucket, and it came up full of fresh, sparkling water from the mouth of the Amazon River. To those of my race who depend on bettering their condition, I would say, cast down your bucket where you are. Cast it down and make friends in every manly way of the people of all the race by whom we are surrounded. We should prosper in proportion as we learn to dignify and glorify common labor and put brains and skill into the common occupation of life. Shall prosper in proportion as we learn to draw the line between the superficial and the substantial, the ornamental guffaws of life and the useful. No race can prosper till it learns that there is so much there's as much dignity in tilling the field as in writing a poem. It is at the bottom of life that we begin and not at the top. That is by Booker T. Washington. Next we have Hitchhikers. If you want to succeed in the world, you must make your own opportunities as you go on. The man who waits for some seventh wave to toss him on dry land will find that the seventh wave is a long time coming. You can commit no greater folly than to sit by the roadside until someone comes along and invites you to ride with him to wealth and influence. That is by John B. Gow. Next, we have what luck means. Luck means the hardships and privations which you have not hesitated to endure, the long nights you have devoted to work. Luck means the appointments you have never failed to keep, the trains you have never failed to catch. That is by Max O'Rell. Next we have closed doors. When God shuts a door, he opens a window. Next we have extraordinary. The true calling of a Christian is not to do extraordinary things, but to do ordinary things in an extraordinary way. That is by Dean Stanley. Next we have individuality. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. A man who would gather immortal palms must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore if it be goodness. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. What I must do is all that concerns me, not what the people think. It is easy to live after your own, but the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. A foolish consistency of the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines, with consistency of great soul and simply nothing to do. That is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Self-made men. I am tired of hearing about self-made men. There is not a self-made man in the world. The so-called self-made man is the man who has seized his opportunities and those given him by circumstances and has made use of them. That is by Lucius Tuttle. Next we have sui generis. All truly wise thoughts have been thought already thousands of times, but to make them really ours, we must think them over again honestly until they take firm root in our personal experiences. That's by Goethe. Next, we have great qualities. It is not sufficient to have great qualities. We must be able to make proper use of them. That is by La Rochefoucauld. Next, we have futile. One does not gain much by mere cleverness. That is by von Verags. Next, we have personality. As the world was plastic and fluid in the hands of God, so it is ever to so much of his attributes as we bring to it. To ignorance and sin, it is flint. The great man makes the great thing. Wherever McDonald sits, there is the head of the table. The day is always his who works in it the serenity and great aims. That is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Next, we have making the best. My business is not to remake myself, but to make the absolute best of what God made. That is by Robert Browning. Duty. All higher motives, ideals, conceptions, sentiments in a man are of no account if they do not come forward to strengthen him for the better discharge of the duties which devolve upon him in the ordinary affairs of life. That is by Henry Ward Beecher. Originality. To do easily what is difficult for others is the mark of talent. To do what is impossible for talent is the mark of genius. That is by Henry Frederick Amiel. Next, we have discouragement. Never let us be discouraged with ourselves. It is not when we are conscious of our faults that we are the most wicked. On the contrary, we are less so. We see by a brighter light. And let us remember for our consolation that we never perceive our sins till we begin to cure them. That is by Francois de la Mothe Fenelon. Next, we have complaining. You are never to complain of your birth, your training, your employments, your hardships, never to fancy that you could be something if only you had a different lot and sphere assigned you. God understands his own plan, and he knows what you want a great deal better than you do. The very things that you most depreciate are as fatal limitations or obstructions are probably what you most want. What you call hindrances, obstacles, discouragements are probably God's opportunities. Bring down your soul, or rather bring it up to receive God's will and do his work in your lot, in your sphere, under your cloud of obscurity, against your temptations, and then you shall find that your condition is never opposed to your good, but really consistent with it. That's by H. Bushnell. Next, we have even the poorest. There has been no man of pure genius, as there has been none wholly destitute of genius. That is by Thoreau. And lastly, we have fairy gold. Of all good gifts which ever came out of the wallet of the fairy godmother, the gift of natural gladness is the greatest and best. It is to the soul what health is to the body, what sanity is to the mind, the test of normality. That is by Bliss Carman. And that takes us to number 22, a section called Others. We have been reading from Leaves of Gold. And this book was edited by Clyde Francis Lytle. And we have been specifically reading chapter 21, a chapter on opportunity. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe, ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, if you want to support me in any way, if you want to join the Discord server, all the information will be in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.